There was a time when people still knew how to listen to silence, when nights were so dark and peaceful that you could hear the stars whispering to one another across the infinite expanse. That evening, Elara sat by her cottage window, watching the last light fade from the sky. She was a cartographer of forgotten places, not the kind you'd find on any modern map, but the spaces between things, the quiet corners where the world held its breath, the meadows that existed only at dusk, the paths that appeared when you weren't looking for them. Her cottage stood at the edge of the whispering woods, where ancient trees grew so tall their tops disappeared into perpetual mist. Most people avoided these woods. They said strange things happened there. Time moved differently. You could walk for what felt like minutes and emerge days later, or wander for weeks and find only moments had passed. But Elara wasn't afraid. She had learned long ago that strangeness was just another word for magic that people had forgotten how to understand. Tonight, something felt different. The air hummed with a gentle vibration, like the world was holding a secret just for her. She wrapped her worn traveling cloak around her shoulders, soft blue fabric that had faded to the color of twilight, and stepped outside. The forest welcomed her with the scent of pine and moss and something else, something like starlight, if starlight had a fragrance. She followed a path she had walked 100 times before, but tonight it seemed to glow faintly, as if lined with luminescent mushrooms that hadn't been there yesterday. As she walked deeper into the woods, the sounds of the ordinary world began to fade. The distant bark of a dog, the creak of settling houses, the whisper of wind through distant fields. All of it melted away, replaced by something softer, a silence that wasn't empty, but full of possibility, full of breath, full of waiting. After what might have been an hour, or might have been no time at all, Elara came to a clearing she had never seen before. In its center stood a pool of water so still it looked like polished obsidian. The surface reflected the night sky above with such perfect clarity that she couldn't tell where the water ended and the heavens began. It was as if someone had cut a hole in the world and she was looking straight through to the other side of everything. She knelt beside the pool, her reflection appearing beside the reflected stars. And that's when she saw it. One star in the reflection that wasn't in the sky above. It glowed with a soft amber light, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. As she watched, the star began to move, drawing a line of golden light across the water's surface. The line formed a path, leading from where she knelt to the far edge of the pool and beyond, into the depths of the forest. "You found me," a voice said, and Elara looked up. Standing on the opposite side of the pool was a figure made entirely of soft light. Not harsh or blinding, but gentle, like candlelight filtering through honey. The figure had the rough shape of a person, but its edges blurred and shifted, as if it couldn't quite decide whether to be solid or remain made of glow. "I've been waiting such a long time," the figure continued, its voice like wind chimes in a lazy breeze. "I was once a star, you see, a real one, up there in the sky, but I fell." Elara tilted her head, curious but not afraid. "Stars fall all the time," she said softly. "People make wishes on them." Stellan's light dimmed slightly, a gesture that might have been sadness. "Yes, but most stars that fall are already dying. They burn out quickly, leave a brief trail of light, and then they're gone. But I fell while I was still burning bright. I fell because I was curious. I wanted to know what it felt like to be close to the world instead of watching from so far away." "And now?" Elara asked. "Now I'm stuck," Stellan said, and there was no bitterness in its voice, only a quiet acceptance. "I'm not quite star anymore, but I'm not quite anything else either. I exist in the spaces between, in clearings like this one, in moments of twilight, in the pause between breaths." Elara understood. She had spent her whole life mapping those in-between places. "Why do you call me here?" she asked. Stellan's light brightened. "Because I've been alone for so long, and I heard about a woman who walks the forgotten paths, a woman who knows how to see what others overlook. I thought perhaps you might help me find my way home." "To the sky?" Elara asked. "To wherever I'm meant to be," Stellan replied. "I don't know if I can become a star again. Maybe that part of my story is over. But I feel like there's somewhere I'm supposed to go, something I'm supposed to become. I just can't find the path on my own." Elara stood slowly, brushing moss from her knees. "I've never mapped a path for a fallen star before," she admitted, "but I'm willing to try." Stellan's light pulsed warmly like a smile. "Then we should begin. The path will reveal itself as we walk. That's how these things work. You just have to trust that each step leads somewhere, even when you can't see where it's going." And so they began to walk, following the golden line that shimmered across the forest floor. The path led them deeper into the whispering woods, through groves of silver birch that gleamed like bones in the darkness, past streams that ran upward instead of down, over bridges made of mist that somehow held their weight. As they walked, Stellan told Elara stories of the sky, of how stars are born in clouds of cosmic dust, how they learn to shine, how they sing to each other in frequencies humans can't hear. "We're not supposed to be lonely," Stellan said. "Stars, I mean. We're meant to exist in clusters, in galaxies, in vast communities of light. But being down here, it's so quiet, so isolating." "The world can be lonely too," Elara said softly. "Maybe especially then." They walked in comfortable silence for a while, the path winding through a garden of night-blooming flowers that opened their petals as they passed and closed them again in their wake. Each flower released a small puff of silvery pollen that hung in the air like tiny stars. "Why do you map forgotten places?" Stellan asked eventually. Elara considered the question. "Because someone needs to remember them," she said finally. "The world is so full of noise and hurry. People forget that magic still exists in the quiet corners. They forget that there are still mysteries worth discovering, still beauty in the spaces they rush past. If I don't map these places, they might disappear entirely, not physically, but from memory, from possibility." "So you're keeping them alive," Stellan said. "In a way. Or maybe they're keeping me alive. It's hard to say which." The path began to climb, winding up a hillside Elara had never seen before. The trees here were different, older, taller, their bark covered in luminous lichen that pulsed faintly with each of Stellan's heartbeats. At the top of the hill, they found themselves standing before an enormous tree. Its trunk was as wide as a house, its branches stretching out in all directions like rivers of wood flowing through the air. And in the center of the trunk, at eye level, was a door. Not a door that had been cut into the wood, but a door that seemed to be part of the tree itself, as if the tree had always been meant to open. The door was made of wood so dark it was almost black, inlaid with patterns of silver that swirled and shifted when you looked at them. Stellan stopped, its light flickering uncertainly. "I know this tree," it whispered. "How?" Elara asked. "I've seen it before, from above. When I was still in the sky, I used to look down and see this tree. It's the oldest living thing in this forest, maybe in this entire world. Its roots go down so deep they touch the center of the earth. Its branches reach so high they brush against the lowest stars." "Do we go in?" Elara asked. Stellan hesitated, then nodded. "I think we must." Elara reached out and touched the door. It swung open silently, revealing a spiral staircase that descended into darkness. But it wasn't a frightening darkness. It was soft, welcoming, like the darkness behind your eyelids when you're about to fall asleep. Stellan's light illuminated the first few steps, and together they began to descend. Down and down they went, the wooden steps smooth beneath their feet, worn by countless others who had walked this path before. The air grew warmer as they descended, and Elara could hear something in the distance, a low rhythmic sound, like breathing, or like waves, or like a heartbeat. After what felt like a long time, the stairs ended, and they stepped out into a vast chamber. The walls were made of living wood, curved and smooth, and the ceiling was so high it was lost in shadow. In the center of the chamber was a pool of light. Not water, not fire, but pure light, gathered and pooled like liquid gold. "The heart of the world," Stellan breathed. "I've heard stories about this place, but I never believed they were real." Around the pool stood 7 figures, each one made of different elements. One seemed to be made of water, constantly flowing but never losing its shape. Another was made of stone, ancient and patient. There was one of wind, one of fire, one of earth, one of ice, and one of pure shadow. They stood in silence, watching as Elara and Stellan approached. The figure made of water spoke first, its voice like rain on leaves. "A star that fell, and a woman who walks forgotten paths. You've come seeking answers." "I'm seeking my place," Stellan said quietly. "I don't know where I belong anymore." The figure made of stone spoke next, its voice like grinding mountains. "You belong everywhere and nowhere. You are transformation itself. You are the space between what was and what will be." "That sounds like another way of saying I'm lost," Stellan said, a hint of frustration in his voice. The figure made of fire crackled warmly. "Lost implies there is a correct place to be. But what if your purpose is to wander? What if your purpose is to bring light to the forgotten places, to illuminate the paths that others have overlooked?" Elara felt something click into place in her mind. She looked at Stellan with new understanding. "You're not trying to get back to the sky," she said softly. You're trying to find out why you fell in the first place." Stellan's light pulsed, and she could sense the truth of her words resonating within the star. "The sky has countless stars, but the world below has shadows that need illumination. Not the harsh light of day, but the gentle light of stars, the light that guides travelers, the light that helps people find their way when they're lost in the dark. You fell because you were needed here," the earth figure rumbled. "You fell because there are places in this world that have forgotten what it means to hope, to dream, to believe in magic, and those places need the light of a star who understands both the heights of the heavens and the depths of the earth." Stellan was quiet for a long moment, its light flickering as it processed these words. "So I'm meant to stay?" it asked finally. "You're meant to guide," the ice figure said, its voice crisp and clear as breaking glass. "To move through the forgotten places, bringing light where there is darkness. You're meant to be a beacon for those who walk the paths that others cannot see." The figure of shadow spoke last, its voice like silk sliding over stone. "And you won't be alone. You've already found your companion." The shadow gestured toward Elara. "A cartographer of forgotten places and a fallen star. Together, you can map and illuminate the lost corners of the world. Together, you can remind people that magic still exists." Elara looked at Stellan, and Stellan's light looked back at her. And in that moment, they both understood. This was why their paths had crossed. This was the answer they had been seeking. The 7 figures began to glow, each one brightening until the chamber was filled with their combined light. The pool in the center began to rise, lifting like a fountain, and the light flowed over Stellan like water, soaking into the star's form. Stellan's glow transformed. It was no longer the uncertain, flickering light of something lost. It was steady now, warm and constant, like a lighthouse beam cutting through fog. Not harsh, not blinding, but strong enough to guide without overwhelming. "Thank you," Stellan said to the 7 figures, and its voice was different too, clearer, more certain. The figures began to fade, returning to their elements, becoming part of the chamber walls, the air, the light, the shadow, until only Elara and Stellan remained. "What now?" Elara asked. "Now we return, and we begin our work." They climbed the spiral stairs together, back up through the heart of the ancient tree, and emerged into the forest. The night was darker now, deeper, but it didn't feel threatening. It felt full of possibility. Stellan's light cut through the darkness, creating a path that glowed golden beneath their feet. And Elara realized that this was what she had been mapping all along. Not just places, but purpose. Not just paths, but meaning. They walked back through the whispering woods together, and everywhere Stellan's light touched, the forest seemed to wake up a little more. Flowers that had been closed opened their petals. Small creatures emerged from their hiding places unafraid. The trees themselves seemed to lean in, as if wanting to be closer to the light. When they reached Elara's cottage, the sky was just beginning to lighten with the first hint of dawn. But Stellan's glow didn't fade. If anything, it grew stronger, more defined. "Will you stay?" Elara asked. "I'll stay close," Stellan promised. "But I'll also wander. That's my nature now. I'll move through the forgotten places, lighting paths that need to be seen. And I'll return to you again and again, because you help me remember why I'm here. Elara smiled. And you help me remember that the places I map aren't just spaces on a page, they're doorways to magic. Stellan's light pulsed warmly, and Elara knew it was smiling too, in its own way. As dawn broke fully across the sky, Stellan began to fade. Not disappearing, but becoming translucent, harder to see in the growing light. "I'll see you at twilight," the star whispered. "At twilight," Elara agreed. And as the sun rose, Elara sat by her window once more. But she wasn't alone anymore. She had found a companion for her journeys, a light for the forgotten places, a friend who understood what it meant to exist in the spaces between. Outside, the world continued its busy, noisy existence. But in the quiet corners, in the forgotten places, in the moments of twilight and the depths of peaceful forests, there was now a light guiding the way. A gentle, steady light that reminded anyone who saw it that magic still existed if you only knew where to look. And if you listened carefully, in the moments between heartbeats, you could hear the stars whispering to one another across the infinite expanse. And now, one of those stars was whispering from much closer by, reminding the world that even fallen things can find their purpose. Even lost things can find their way home. Even in darkness, there is always light. You just have to be willing to see it. Good night. The dream goes on.